Thank you, folks. Welcome back. And during the break, we got a call from Bill on line two. Take it away, Bill. You there?
Good evening, Sheriff Villanueva. Villanueva. Yeah, sir, let me thank you for your service to our community, your longtime service. I'm a retired National Guard myself. We have proud to have some of your members as part of our unit during my time in. Exemplary soldiers and non-commissioned officers, one and all. Sheriff, I wanted to ask you, in terms of leadership with the board, what is possible that you might be able to do to improve your relationship with the Board of Supervisors elected overall by the county, a situation where there's a positive relationship instead of this fight of brinksmanship between what they perceive and what do you think needs to be done, sir?
Well, I think the first and foremost, I think we need a whole new Board of Supervisors. I need a Board of Supervisors that's ethical, that represents the interests of the community, is actually willing to engage with me. And surprisingly, this current board hired a law firm to sue me 1 month into office. Blew my mind. I explained my action to them in what they call a closed session in detail. They didn't ask me a single question, but it turns out they'd already hired the law firm to sue me. Never bothered to tell me that. So then later on that same week, this is now February of 2019, they announced that they're suing me. So that kind of underhanded, it's just unethical behavior. And I don't really know what drives them other than that desperate, quest for more power and consolidation of all authority into their hands only. Now, there's two supervisors amenable, and we want to encourage them to actually find their own voice instead of just kowtowing to whatever the other three, the ones with the bullhorns and do all the screaming, to start having your own voice. And I hate to see those 5-0 votes because nothing in real life is a unanimous decision, but almost everything that the board does is unanimous, with occasionally Catherine Barger, steps up and does one on her own. I need to have more people do that. I need to have Janice Hahn find her own voice, because I guarantee you the interests of her constituents and those of the 5th District have nothing to do with the perceived interests of the constituents as dictated by the other supervisors in 1, 2, and 3. I know that is a fact, because you talk to anyone on the street and they cannot make any rhyme or reason to the decisions coming out of the board right now. So that's something we need to be aware of. And for example, just look at now the rising violent crime. I have murders up 60%. That is unreal. 60%. That's uncharted territory for the department. Now, if I go to number of incidents, homicide up 50%. The number of dead bodies up 60%. Grand theft auto up 30%. Property crimes up 5%. Overall Part 1 crimes up 4.27%. Our only saving grace is still we have a decrease in some of the crimes, and mainly because of the way the pandemic is altered, our social habits and practices. It puts people out of harm's way with closed businesses, everyone at home. But those things are starting to dissipate and things are returning to normal. However, when it comes to violent crime, and particularly with weapons involved, that keeps going up and up. Now we're overall up 31%. Crimes, aggravated assaults with a firearm, and unlawful shootings. These are things trending upwards, but I've yet to see a single board motion, not one, that addresses rising homicide. And surprising, because you think that supervisor in District 1 and 2, where most of these homicides are occurring, would have something to say about it, but apparently they don't. Unless it involves the people who are committing these homicides and these violent assaults, then they're very concerned that they don't wind up in jail, where they could possibly be harmed by incarceration. Remember, care first, jail last? Yes. Apparently, they're only concerned about harm to criminal offenders, not to victims of crime. So all of their board motions reflect this, and there's nothing ever about how to address rise in violent crime. Because the logical conclusion typically is, well, we need to support traditional law enforcement means. We need to have funding. In fact, we need to increase funding not only for obviously the Super Bowl, the homeless issue. We're building up for the Olympics in 2028. There's a lot of things. But you got to remember, the board froze 1,400 sheriff's department positions. At the same time, we have this rising crime rate. 1,400 positions. That is a lot more deputies we could have out there in patrol. A lot more deputies on our homeless outreach service teams. A lot more deputies to eradicate the marijuana grows in the high desert. A lot of things that need to be happening are not happening. And all this falls back on the board of supervisors. So how can we improve relationship with people that have no interest in having a relationship is always a tough question. And I think basically we just need other people in office. I don't need career politicians. I don't need people that want to view the supervisor position as a stepping stone to bigger office or to line their pockets with it. I need people that actually want to go in there, figure out what's the right thing to do for the community, and get the job done. I think people are tired of all this nonsense and double talk. People want to see action. They want to see action on the homelessness. They want to see action on people with guns running around shooting people. Yes, we want to see action on the DA actually doing his job. Imagine that. Here we have a district attorney, George Gascon, who is deliberately not doing what the California Constitution mandates that he should do. And he won't do it, yet they have no problem with that. In fact, they're throwing money at George Gascon. And I'm seeing all of his expenditures. There's no hiring freeze when it comes to the DA's office. Their only hiring freeze is going to apply to the sheriff's department. Yes, imagine that. They lifted the hiring freeze, or they're lifting it this week for everybody but the sheriff's department. And we can solve crime. We can drive those numbers down. We can definitely solve homelessness. We have the formula. It is working. Our homeless outreach team is doing an outstanding job at that. Our only limitation is the lack of resources, and we're being throttled by the current board of supervisors. Now, why is that? We need to have everyone light up that switchboard on the board of supervisors, districts 1 through 4, actually 1 through 5. No, we're not going to leave Catherine Barger off the hook either. Now, anybody who wants to work, roll up their sleeves and get the job done. I don't care who you are. I will work with you. Like I said before, just show up and say, how can I help? And we will roll up our sleeves together and we'll start working. That is a governor all the way down to our, even Mr. Mike Bonin there on City District 11. As clueless as he may be, if he's willing to get the job done and roll up his sleeves, I will work with him as well. And that's my commitment as a sheriff of LA County. I will work with anybody who wants to get the job done. If you don't want to get the job done and you want to be in the way, well, by the same token, you can join the ranks of the Architects of Failure. I'm still looking for applicants to join the Architects of Success. Strangely, I can't find anyone to take that position yet. A couple of people are dabbling in it, but we're not there yet. So we're going to keep pushing ahead. And remember, there's no measure to what we can accomplish if we don't care who gets credit for it. Very important. All right. So now, this is Sheriff Alex Villanueva, and this is KFI AM 640. And when we come back, let's talk a bit about these police subgroups. So let's talk a bit about these law enforcement subgroups, like some of our critics like to call deputy gangs or police gangs. And there was a report issued by the RAND Corporation, but I should say this is a report that was paid for by the Board of Supervisors, yet is being billed as an independent study. There's nothing independent about a study that you pay for. And that is true in any walk of life. The tobacco industry paid for a lot of studies back in the 60s about how smoking was not harmful for you. And then again, you pay what you get. So keep that in mind when they say it's an independent study. It was not independent at all. In fact, it pointed to something that people were trying to find, oh my God, what it says that somehow the problem is growing. Actually, they did lay out that it's shrinking. The issue, the size of these subgroups, the number of people that are being recruited to join these subgroups. But something important that was in this was the conditions that allows these subgroups to exist in the first place is actually created by none other than the Board of Supervisors. LA County Sheriff's Department is the most understaffed law enforcement agency in the entire nation. We have 0.9 deputies per 1,000 residents. LAPD has 2.2. National average is 2.5. Metropolitan average is 3.8. NYPD has more than 4 cops per 1,000. And we're trying to get the job done here in LA with less than one deputy per 1,000. You think those deputies rely on each other for life and death situation? They form strong bonds? Of course they do. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is we have to remain hyper vigilant that these groups, they form these bonds, don't devolve into something that involves misconduct. So the challenge is, and the board likes to trot out this figure, well, our county council says we paid out $55 million since 1990. Well, turns out not one penny of that came from a judgment from a jury who actually decided on the evidence. Not one. All of it came from allegations, complaints. None of it was taken to court. No one ever had to prove anything. In fact, the one case that we know that someone was actually on a deposition had to prove it was a deputy who made a claim from Compton Station that got a lot of news. Oh my God, these groups running amok. And it turns out that when he was under oath, was asked to provide the evidence, apparently he could not provide any evidence at all. His answer to every question, well, it's common knowledge. So his case was thrown out with prejudice by the judge. But the interesting thing is his allegations in his lawsuit that he filed was carried everywhere as the gospel truth and is somehow a fact. But no one ever bothered following up and said, oh, wait, that whole case got thrown out, which means the allegation had no merit to it. Yet to this day, there's still reporters referencing those allegations as somehow evidence. Someone makes a complaint, files a lawsuit. They're seeking money, for sure. So these things are a basis for countless LA Times articles. In every single one, they've never acknowledged that his case was thrown out in court. The Times refused it because it doesn't suit their false narrative. So you're going to keep hammering this idea over and over again about how much money and all these very, scandalous allegations, salacious. However, we ask, where is the proof? Same thing with the Board of Supervisors, and there's motions about harassment of families of loved ones who died in deputy-involved shootings. And they said, oh, this one unit passed by their home and they were smiling or they were laughing or they waved as a sign of harassment. And I think that is such utter nonsense. Of course, we looked into them. We found no evidence of anything that could be sustainable. And we have body-worn cameras now. So where is the evidence of all this harassment? We have it all on film now. Where is the evidence? I challenge anyone, Board of Supervisors, any of these would-be reporters, identify someone who you think is a gang member that wears tan and green. Name them. Identify the incident that we failed to hold people accountable, that we did not investigate properly. Name it. Particularly since I've been in office. Please don't tell me about something 10 years ago I was not in charge. But since I've been in office, you name it. Problem is nobody can. The whole issue about these subgroups or the alleged deputy gangs, as they like to talk about them, they had to make it up. Yes, it's a straw man argument, and they want to defeat a straw man. And then if we don't do anything about it, you refuse to acknowledge it, yet why am I acknowledging something that there's no evidence of? Everyone has a financial incentive to sell the idea that these things exist, that these subgroups exist, that they're now gangs. Well, I know what a real gang member looks like. If you go to 186.22 of the California Penal Code, it lays out specifically what a gang member is. So if I have a gang member lawfully detained or arrested, I go to their crime sheet or their rap sheet and it has a long list of all the crimes they were involved in. And it might be related to the crime that I actually arrested them for. That is what a gang member does. Now, if I get a deputy, what do I get? I have a list of their evaluation, all their commendations. Maybe they had an administrative investigation for failure to qualify with their duty weapon or preventable TC. And you're going to tell me that person is a gang member because he got a tattoo at a party? That is how asinine the argument is. But it sells. It sells to people who don't want to take the time to understand the totality of the circumstances. Don't understand that people have a vested financial interest in selling a false narrative. So yes, I'm going to push back on that. Do we have to be always hyper vigilant? On about subgroups, yes, of course, we always have to, particularly when they can devolve into misconduct. It would help if I had more deputies out there on the street. It would help if I had more supervisors. The ratio of deputy to supervisor is in such bad shape right now. I have sergeants working in the field being drafted 9 times a month to do a double shift. Count it, 9 times a month. That is horrendous. That means at least 2 or 3 times a week they're doing double shifts because there's no other sergeants left available. We can't have the field units out there without proper supervision. So I need more deputies to bring that ratio down. I need more supervisors to bring the ratio of supervisor to deputies down. And that would be a step forward, but that would involve, oh my God, wait, brace yourself. You have to fund the department. Yes, you have to provide the sufficient staffing level. So you can't starve the organization and then complain about the results after that. That does not work. All right. So keep that in mind. Now, AB 958, I supported it. In fact, I sponsored that legislation. So we'll talk about that when we come back from the break. But right now, this is Alex Villanueva and KFI AM 640. And I said when we come back, we'll talk a bit about AB 958. And there's some interesting news to follow with that. But
first of all, I wanted to thank you for stepping up and cleaning up the homeless problem in LA. I haven't been to LA in about 5 months, but since you have stepped up to make the change, I've noticed a definite big change in the area. I wanted to ask you, since you've stepped up to make that change, is there any reason to believe that you have had retaliation against your department as far as getting the funding and the people that you need to help with the homeless problem? And another question I wanted to ask you was, how and if possible, do we get a new board of supervisors, and what needs to be done to make that change?
All right. Well, I can tell you this, Javier. Pretty much everything that the board is doing right now is retaliation for my position as independently elected sheriff. Virtually everything. In fact, I had one of my deputies do a count of board actions since my time in office in comparison to Jim McDonald, my predecessor's time in office. The board took 9 negative actions against the previous sheriff. Now, the 2 years and 9 or 10 months that I've been in office, they've taken, as of Tuesday, 72 negative actions against me, which is an astonishing change. So they definitely shifted gears when the sheriff changed hands, and that's got retaliation written all over it. Now, in terms of getting a new board of supervisors, it's going to be up to the voters of each district. If they want to tolerate corruption and incompetence in their supervisors, that's going to be on their shoulders. Ultimately, we get the government we deserve. But I'm the first Spanish-speaking sheriff in over 100 years, and you'd think with my ability to connect with the community from all walks of life, and what I'm representing and I'm pushing and defending these communities, I'd get more support, especially when they're from my own alleged party, which I can't even recognize today what it's become. So that's something to think about there. But let's see what our voters do come 2022. All right. Now, with that in mind, let's talk a bit about the governor signed a wave of bills into law last week, and of particular interest was one, AB 958. That was the one about police reform that had to do with law enforcement. They called it gangs, and that is one that I sponsored. As we mentioned, they signed it into law. There were some changes that I weren't too happy with, but overall, it mirrors the department's policy that we enacted in February of last year, 2020, way before this was the topic of the day. But there's another bill, SB2, which was a police decertification bill. And this was championed by our state senator, Bradford. And he's from LA, and he was very proud to announce his support for this bill. And allegedly it's to weed out the bad cops. Which is very interesting, though, because this same senator is now endorsing a candidate to replace me who was a right-hand man of one Paul Tanaka. And this guy was sentenced in federal prison for 5 years for his corruption and his part. in the Pandora Box scandal with Lee Baca. And I've been on the department for 35 years. I don't think there's been a more corrupt person ever to wear tan and green than a guy named Paul Tanaka. His right-hand man is now a candidate for sheriff, and he's being endorsed by the California Legislative Black Caucus and by Senator Bradford. In the same breath, they say, but we're going to support SB2 to decertify bad cops. So I don't know how you marry those two things together, but it's a troubling thing for me. I think maybe perhaps Senator Bradford can explain that to his constituents. You want to get rid of bad cops, but you want to invite the worst of the worst to become the sheriff of LA County? That's not going to sit well with anybody. So I think some people's days are over in terms of seeking higher office. And how these people somehow pass backgrounds to become a chief of police somewhere, I'd really like to know what quality of a background was done. Or were there some favors done, or how did that all happen? Because there's some people now who are applying to challenge me for my job that I don't think would pass a background to become a deputy sheriff trainee. But that's the world we live in today. So something to be aware of. Now, so with all these items on the table, all these different things that were passed into law, bear in mind that the reform efforts that we've taken out of the department have really moved the needle in a way that, and you can ask any member of the department now, how much reform we've achieved in 2.5 years. Body-worn cameras, kicking ICE out of the jails, rejecting SCAP grant funds. This is where the Board of Supervisors was selling the undocumented database to the feds, while at the same time patting themselves on the back on how kind they were supporting the undocumented. CCW reform, all these things that we've enacted that have really moved the needle, put this department in a far better place than it was before. Definitely it's working. We are definitely reforming this department like it has never been done before. And that is, I would have did a gratitude to every single man and woman who works for the Sheriff's Department and the community members who are stepping up and making all this possible. So let's keep that in mind. Now, with it in mind, let's go. This is Alex Villanueva on KFI AM 640. And when we come back, we'll tell you a little bit about the board's proxy war. We're running short on time, but I want to point out what he mentioned. And this is about board mandating vaccinations. And he makes the observation, if people get fired, how does that improve public safety? Well, that's actually, Timmy, that's a very good good question. And I do know this, as sheriff, I'm not going to mandate vaccination of my employees. I will heavily encourage it. I myself have vaccinated. I've been vaccinated my whole family since January. I encourage everyone to get vaccinated. The science is there. You're not going to get a microchip, or you're not going to be, had dead baby cells, injected in you, any weird thing like that that's going around there. No, it is safe. It is reliable. And you're anywhere from 11 to 17 times less likely to die if you catch COVID if you're vaccinated than if you're unvaccinated. So the choice is yours, but choose wisely, as the movie says. But with that, let's talk a bit about the board's proxy war. Now, this is something people are unaware of, but the board has actually leveraged and weaponized every single county department against the sheriff's department to their liking. To wit, county council. County council, I have no attorney whatsoever that can represent my interests. So I'm running the nation's largest sheriff's department, $3.5 billion budget, and I have no access to an attorney that represents me. They represent the Board of Supervisors. And then when there's a conflict between myself and the Board of Supervisors, their attitude is, well, too bad, screw you. And, oh, by the way, but you can't have an attorney either. To the point they're even doing all these motions. This proxy war involves the Office of Inspector General, the Civilian Oversight Commission. Remember, they're all appointed by the Board of Supervisors, County Council, Board of Supervisors. All these different entities are working in concert. They collaborate amongst themselves, so they have this ongoing three-ring circus and this echo chamber of, oh my God, this, oh my God, that. When you look at everything originates around the Board of Supervisors. So we've been telling them to put the nonsense down. They want to claim that the Oversight Commission is a bridge between the Sheriff's Department and the community. They are not. In fact, they don't even care to have one Latino on the Oversight Commission. They have 8 appointed flunkies from the board, and they're the political attack machine of the Board of Supervisors, and they're not a deliberative body in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. A truly deliberative body has opposing points of view, has opposing perspectives. Just like you have a deliberative bodies within the city of LA, and there are different commissions where the mayor appoints some people, the city council appoints people. Well, those you have a little bit more of a deliberative process. Same thing with a lot of the commissions that come from state government. You have different people that are contributing, but the board contributes everybody to the oversight commission and then says, oh my God, they're independent. They're not independent at all. They do everything the board tells them, and they do it a cappella. So we need to end that nonsense right now about this independence. And I'm going to say this. I love oversight. I love an inspector general, but I need to have an honest and ethical one. What I want to see on a ballot, instead of a nonsense like Measure J, I want to see something on the ballot that makes an independently elected inspector general that covers all of county government. Yes, that includes the Board of Supervisors who finally get the desperately needed oversight that they've never seen before. And they're so accustomed to having the way and everything. They need some oversight as well. They need an inspector general that has subpoena power, not to be abused, but to get records like subpoenas are supposed to be. And they need to have a look at every aspect of county government, including the sheriff's department. And its independently elected body, now we're talking. That is truly what inspector generals and oversight should be about. A valid, third-party, independent, offering a candid assessment of the operations of county government, how effective we are or not. And that is how we improve. I need that type of advice as I'm running the sheriff's department, but I do not get that advice. All I get is an angry mob of people. And if you look at who attends online these things, a very small group of people. So always the same people every month or so. No one different. So that's what we need. We need to definitely happen to make the county work better. Now, check this out. I received a letter from county council telling me not to release a confidential document. Then I see it published by the LA Times. Isn't that funny? Yeah, that's what's going on all the time. In fact, about our policy on the subgroups and my position that the county's position is unconstitutional, I said, give me an update. They had a policy in 2014, so they sent me an updated policy in 2021, or opinion. But it comes, remember, county council opinion. They're going to make an opinion, and whatever the board tells them to do, they're going to find a legal reason to justify it. And they're going to try to sell that as a valid thing. Measure J is a prime example of that. They said, oh, Measure J is constitutional, put it on the ballot, everyone voted for it, got suckered into it, and then the judge had to tell them, it's unconstitutional. So that's a quality of county council opinions. We got all kinds of strange things coming out of county council. They are remember, there's 300 attorneys that represent the county, plus all the other attorneys, law firms that they contract with. There is 0 attorneys that can represent the sheriff's department independently. 0. It is such a lopsided war that they're engaged in. This is a proxy war. Everything they do is through intermediaries designed to discredit, defund, and ultimately delegitimize the sheriff's department. But in spite of that, we're going to continue doing our job. We're going to continue serving the community. Our department now is a reflection of the community. We've did so many reform measures to make us more accountable, more transparent, and better serving the needs of the community. Our community advisory councils now has been everywhere doing everything, working through the pandemic, getting the food banks running, getting the vaccination clinics, the testing sites. We've been doing all these things. Now our homeless outreach, same thing. We're keep pushing the needle, keep driving innovation. The body-worn cameras, very, very, very good program. A huge, huge step towards transparency. And to think that the Board of Supervisors actually fought against the body-worn cameras. And that's something. But all these measures, you look at the diversity of the sheriff's department now. We've had female assistant sheriffs, 2 of them. I have 6 out of 12 division chiefs who are female. So we have shattered so many glass barriers that was holding females and people of color back in this department. Is no longer the good old boy crowd of the past. Now I have candidates for sheriff who are part of that good old boy crowd from the past that want to try to relive it and revive it. But I think voters are going to be smarter than that. They're going to keep demanding action on reform, and we're going to continue delivering that action on reform. And now we got to work to get that hiring freeze lifted so we can start hiring again men and women from the community, representing the community, serving the community as deputy sheriffs, as custody assistants, and all the other professional staff positions that we desperately need to fill. Because right now, by the way, we've also raised the standard to become a deputy sheriff. Now you have to have an AA degree. You have to be 21 years of age. This educational standard is new to the department. In fact, it's new to sheriff's departments, I believe, throughout the nation. We're the first one to do this, and very exciting. So we're raising the standard. The quality of our candidate pool is also getting higher and higher. So this is very good for the community. It bodes well for the future of the organization. We're changing the organizational culture from that warrior mindset to a guardian mindset, and it's all about engagement. In the past, it was all about enforcement. Now it's about engagement. We started a program, a Hometown Heroes Needed. Are you in? So our Hometown Hero campaign designed to recruit from our own communities, and that is working. And we're trying to recruit people who want to be engaged, empowered to work with their own communities. The old mantra of about you're only as good as how many arrests you make, those days are gone. That was the enforcement days of the last century. Now in 2021, it's about engagement. How engaged are you in the community? How well do you understand the community? How well you're building relationships with the community, and how you can leverage those relationships to make everyone safer. Yes, that means occasionally the bad guys are going to go to jail like they need to, but also we're going to try to avoid our young kids from taking the wrong path and hanging out with the wrong people. And then if they associate themselves with delinquent peers, those are the people that wind up being your real gang members, not the fake one, but the real gang members that harm the community. How we can break that cycle and keep them the straight and narrow path. So these are the things that we're doing now. We're excited to keep getting more input from the community, and we encourage all of our 23 patrol stations. We have community advisory councils going up everywhere for a lot of different causes. So, and as we're wrapping it up and we're closing down the show, I want to encourage everyone to dial into the town hall or in person. We're going to have multiple town halls throughout the county, and you can go to lasd.org for that information. But in closing, I want to thank Robin Bertolucci, Sam Zia, and David Calloway. So I'm Sheriff Alex Villanueva, and this is KFI AM 640,